In this video, you will see me unpack two standards. These standards are aligned. These standards come from the Common Core State Standards for Math 8. These standards align with a unit that I'm about to teach in class. This is the reason that I chose the standards. We're going to dive deep on Standard 8FA3, where students will give examples of functions that are not linear, and Standard 8GC9. Scholars must know the formulas for the volumes of cones, cylinders, and spheres, and use them to solve real world and mathematical problems. Mastery metrics. Scholars need to know that piecewise linear functions, which are nonlinear functions, is a function whose graph is placed together out of line segments. They also need to know the volumes of a cylinder, cone, and sphere are V equals BH, V equals 1/3 pi r squared, V equals 4/3 pi r cubed, respectively, and they can be used to solve real-world problems related to functions. Scholars also have to provide examples of linear functions using multiple representations, that's table, graphs, and equations. They need to also compare the characteristics of linear and nonlinear functions using various representations. And they have to state formulas of cones, cylinders, and spheres, and use formulas of cones, cylinders, and spheres to solve real world and mathematical problems. As we go through this unit, we're going to constantly come back to the fact that a function is a rule that assigns to each input exactly one output. Functions can be represented in four ways: algebraically, graphically, numerically, in tables, and by verbal descriptions. Also, volume is a unit of measurement that indicates the number of cubic units a three-dimensional shape can hold. As we go through the lesson, we're going to constantly wonder, why does one need to define a function, and how can one use volume to solve real world and mathematical problems? I have picked 3 lessons for this unit that are cross-curricular and address 21st century skills. The first lesson, Sweet Tooth, scholars are going to figure out how much candy should you eat. They're going to learn many people's enjoyment of something pleasurable, like Halloween candy or income, is not positively linear. More of a good thing is not always better. In this lesson, scholars interpret a graph, they share their expected marginal enjoyment, they give each person's total enjoyment, they graph it, and they watch a video in which psychologist Daniel Kahneman describes the relationship between income and happiness. Their work is going to be to relate the phenomenon of diminishing returns to candy and share other examples of diminishing returns. We have a second lesson, bottled water, and scholars will figure out what's the best size of disposable water bottle. In this lesson, scholars will learn millions of tons of single-use plastic water bottles have ended up in the oceans and are wreaking havoc on wildlife. In this lesson, scholars will approximate the volume of water bottles. They'll calculate how many water bottles of each size one would need to drink to meet doctors' recommendations for daily hydration. They'll find the surface area of plastic, and they'll identify consequences of single-use plastics and generate ideas for reducing waste while staying hydrated. The third lesson, scholars will figure out what's the best strategy for cutting down trees. They'll learn that humans cut down trees so they can use the wood for homes, charcoal, paper, etc. However, trees grow with time, so mature trees simply have more tree to them. A more mature, bigger tree will also gain more volume in a year than it would have when it was younger and smaller. In this lesson, scholars will use annual growth rates to calculate height and diameter. They will calculate the volume of tree trunks at various ages, and they will compare how young trees versus old trees would be needed to provide the volume needed for various human uses of timber. They'll also watch a video about the dangers of using too much timber, evaluate a common policy response, and discuss possible solutions. These 3 lessons embody several 21st century skills, specifically health literacy, make judgments and decisions, and solve problems. As we go through this unit, I will assess scholars daily with cooldowns. My cooldowns are divided into 3 categories. Advanced level cooldowns, which is the example on the screen. These cooldowns allow advanced scholars to use their literacy level to solve problems. And these scholars are also expected to do more comprehensive work. And you'll see as we look at the other examples that these scholars actually are going to draw a graph, not just relate graphs, tables, and scenarios. For my on-level scholars, they're just going to pretty much relate tables to scenarios and analyze a graph using a multiple choice option. For my SPED scholars, they're actually going to do less problems. They will have more time and they will actually relate a table to a scenario and graph. In my class, I have ELL students on multiple levels, advanced, on level, and SPED. As a result, ELL students will get a video vocabulary card and they will have vocabulary words defined for them using the audio feature of a video. And they will be able to use this audio vocabulary card regardless of their level to complete cooldowns daily. As you can see, I have applied the same concept here with an advanced level example, an on level example, and a SPED example. Once again, scholars will get a video card with audio vocabulary if they are English language learners. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the video.